about the Candlelight Memorial, which as GNP Plus, we have been hosting for a few years now. And it's one of those events that we look up to and every year, because it's one day where we get to remember people we've lost through AIDS, and that we get to connect with our communities. Not to waste any time, I'd like to open the floor to our keynote speaker, Sean. Sean Welles is a long supporter of the Candlelight Memorial and a lead at HIV, Healthcare, VIV Healthcare Foundation. So Sean, let me not butcher your title and hand it over to you to open us up for this webinar. Thank you.
Brothers and sisters, it is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to open this webinar, because this day is a very important day in the annual HIV calendar. It's a day when we come together to remember, and it's a day when we come together to celebrate. We remember and celebrate lives lost, the many giants upon whose shoulders we walk, the mothers, the fathers, the sisters, the brothers, the lovers, the husbands, the wives, the children. Think of them now, see their faces, feel their hugs, hear their words. We remember too the struggles fought, and we celebrate those that we've won. The energy, sweat, and tears that have gone into campaigns and protests to bring about meaningful change, of which we are all able to benefit. Campaigns which, through solidarity of community, overcame obstacles and gave hope. We celebrate the lives of those of us living with HIV, grateful for what we have, and recognizing that much still needs to be done. It is through spreading love and solidarity that we are grateful to the many who have used and continue to use their voices to bring about change and to define a path for us to follow. It is through spreading love and solidarity that we respect and appreciate those who were not or are not able to use their voice due to the overwhelming stigma, criminalization, anti-gender, anti-rights, homophobia and transphobia, or even just simply isolation. We need to hold on to each other and care for one another, particularly during these trying times. And it is through spreading love and solidarity that we are not only reminded of the many struggles that lie ahead, but that we also recommit ourselves to overcoming these struggles and always, always remember and celebrate those who have come before. Back to you, Ana Olusegun.
Thank you so much, Sean, for those words. We do feel them, and we do always take cognizance to remember those that we have lost, but also to fight forward for the struggle. But just to just get us through to the next section of our webinar, we have the structure is going to be two sections of panels, where the first one will be an overall around stigma and discrimination, and then the second one will be hearing from communities. But our first speaker for the first section is Nadine Ferris-France, the co-founder and CEO of Beyond Stigma. And Nadine has been working in an Irish NGO working on stigma and discrimination and mental health for over 25 years. Nadine, please, can you just briefly give us an intro about Beyond Stigma and what is the importance to differentiate self-stigma and stigma from stigma?
Thank you, Lizego, and thank you, Sean, for those words, and hi to everybody who's has joined. It's an honor to be here for this very special occasion. And like Sean, I want to start by remembering, in particular, a friend of Sean and I, a young woman called Marie Faye, a precious friend who died at 28 years old. She was from the Philippines, and Marie Faye didn't die from AIDS. She died from self-stigma and shame. And I remember how angry I was, how confused I was, how sad that even though she had medication, in fact, she was among the first women, one of the first women in Southeast Asia to be on treatment, even though the treatment was hard to tolerate, self-stigma was a silent killer. How she felt about herself and her worthiness, the shame that she felt about the possibility that her family might find out. And it was Marie Faye, and also a powerful conversation and sharing by my longtime friend, Sean, about what self-stigma was like back in South Africa in 2001. And that inspired me and motivated me to do this work on stigma and self-stigma. So you asked me to speak a little bit about self-stigma. So why is it important to understand what self-stigma or internal stigma is? Because simply, unless I am actually aware of what it is and how it moves within me, I can't actually change it. We talk about self-stigma, but what is it actually? Well, self-stigma, it's a mindset of negative beliefs and thoughts and behaviors about HIV that manifest as shame and as guilt, with feelings of contamination, self-loathing, and self-rejection. That one we're used to. But another way of looking at this is a much more powerful way is, what would we have in the absence of self-stigma? We would have self-worth, we would have self-agency, self-love, we would be living solidarity. The list is long. Self-stigma happens when we internalize external stigma and judgments, and then we believe that they're true. And it also happens in the absence of external stigma and discrimination. You know, either way, self-stigma lives inside of us in our deepest beliefs about ourselves. And, you know, self-stigma and shame, they're like sisters in this. They're always together. They're close. You know, why self-stigma, you know, it serves a function inside of us. It's not about blaming ourselves. It's about protecting. We think it's about protecting ourselves. If I think this about me, then I might be less hurt when you think it about me. So I'm only trying to protect myself. So it makes sense that if we're going to change self-stigma, the work is going to be deep, and we're going to have to start from the inside. Like if I ask on this call, how many people have ever had a thought like, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough? Yeah, it's like if we could all put our hands up and we could see them flow, we'd have our hands up, you know. And self-stigma, it's like, what does it actually look like? What does self-stigma look like? You know, it's particularly with people living with HIV, some of the research that we've seen, you know, it looks like I'm undeserving. I am less than, I am less human. I'm dirty. It's a punishment from God. That's what the beliefs actually look like. That's what it looks like. So what does self-stigma do, and why should we try to address it? Well, self-stigma, it stops us accessing healthcare services. It stops us being able to be that version of ourselves that feels worthy enough to take education, to take opportunities that life would give us. It gets in the way of even adherence to medication. If I don't feel worthy, I'm not going to take my medication. So that we know a lot more about that. We know what self-stigma does and why we should address it. But it's time to flip the narrative, to stop talking about the negative consequences of self-stigma and instead keep talking about what happens when we address it. So stop talking about the lack and start talking about the gain. Like, what would a world beyond stigma actually look like? You know, in some ways, it's like, stop stigmatizing stigma itself and talk about these other things that we're reaching for: self-worth, changing the story, like the story, our story, my story, your story. And the world would be a world of inclusion, where I would adhere to my medication. I would feel worthy of adhering to my medication. I would take those opportunities. In terms of systems, you know, I would access my rights. I would feel like that was, I was right to, I have rights and I am going to exercise them. So let's talk about inclusion and belonging instead of this world of self-stigma. So what can we do about it? You know, in Beyond Stigma, we've been working for the past 10 years to try and understand what the beliefs are, because if you can understand what the beliefs are, then you can do something to shift those beliefs. And we have been designing evidence-based programs using inquiry-based stress reduction, or it's called sometimes the work of Byron and Katie. We've been working with communities to tackle those deeply rooted beliefs and flip the narrative. So we are feeling, not just talking about, feeling and believing full of self-love and self-worth. And, you know, that kind of work, it takes time, it's deep work, but the results are not just felt in the individual, they're also felt among our friends, among our families, in our communities, and in our wider societies. We have had some experience working with sex workers in Vietnam, working with ZNNP Plus in Zimbabwe, working with Jandiri, you're going to hear about that, with young people living with HIV in Zimbabwe, working on obesity, self-stigma and shame related to obesity here in Ireland. So we have some experience with this. And, you know, later on, you're going to hear in the communities section, which I'm really excited for, you're going to hear about Wakakosha, which is a program working with young people living with HIV in Zimbabwe that we co-designed with Jandiri and the young people themselves. And it includes work on beliefs, that deep work on beliefs, but also creativity, music, meditation, art, poetry, all things that make us human. And in this program, part of it is about writing letters as a way of expressing some of the big shifts that actually happen in terms of acceptance and self-love and awareness and forgiveness. And this is the same letter that is the invitation for this Candlelight Memorial event. And I know Florence will talk about it a little bit later. There's no better way to share what a letter like this, a letter of love, can look like than to hear it straight from the young people in Zimbabwe themselves, our greatest teachers about what is possible when we move from self-stigma to self-worth. And I wanted to play a very short letter from one of the young people. If I'm able to share my screen, I will do it really as quickly as I can, and everybody can just hear the voices directly. And let me see, I hope this works. Let me see. If not, oh, don't you love how technology just doesn't move like that at all? There's the go. I don't think you have the link, is that right?
No, I don't have the link, but can we maybe play it when one of the community members play, and then we can maybe have the link then?
Perfect, Lesigo. That is perfect. We'll set it up. And thank you, everybody. And I'm so looking forward to this. Thank you for including me. Back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nadine, for sharing all those wonderful thoughts. And thank you so much for speaking to the Wakakosha. I think it's really something that's interesting that we're definitely looking forward to. So welcome once again to all those that have joined just now. Let me reintroduce myself. My name is Anna, and I'm happy to be here with everyone speaking about solidarity and spreading love and being able to commemorate Candlelight, the 8th Candlelight Memorial. So right now, we're just going to welcome our next speaker, who is Joyce. Joyce is an amazing, charismatic and committed and self-motivated young woman whose passion and roots are from lived experiences, and is also a young woman living with HIV. Joyce has tons of experience in the area of HIV prevention, treatment, care, and support, and is also very passionate about ethical and meaningful engagement of young people. And I know, Nadine, you also spoke to the issue around the involvement of young people and really hearing the voices and perspectives of young people when it comes to issues to do with addressing stigma, specifically self-stigma. So welcome, Joyce. And whilst we're going to give you the floor, Joyce, just please touch on how self-stigma affects or rather impacts on young people, and what are some of the approaches that have been put in place to address this?
Great. Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you for having me on this exciting and a moment of reflection for us all who are living with HIV. It's actually very interesting having listened to Sean and also having listened to Nadine about, how far we've come and how far we're going. And on this day, when I've been asked to talk about something that is rarely talked about, the issue of self-stigma and how it impacts young people living with HIV. As we know, youth and adolescence is a period of transition and uncertainty, and it gets worse when you're a young person living with HIV. Young people living with HIV go through the internalized stigma, and it's mostly fueled by many factors that are usually unresolved right from when someone gets diagnosed with HIV. And even as they live through it, the issue of self-stigma is never really looked into, as most of the people are focusing on the external factors that are likely to affect this person. As Nadine has shared, self-stigma really affects self-image. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback. Thank you. So as Nadine passionately shared, self-stigma really does affect one's self-image, the self-esteem, and the level of engagement that as young people living with HIV we have with each other. And the side effect that comes with this medication doesn't make this any easier. For example, when I first got diagnosed with HIV, I didn't tell anyone immediately, but I kept to myself for some time. So at this point, I wasn't exposed to any form of external stigma, but I was already going through the internal stigma by myself. And that's the main reason as to why I did not tell anyone about this. I blamed myself, the society, anybody who was around me at the time, because I was struggling to understand why me in specific, and how am I going to get out of this? And self-stigma led me to seek faith healing and an easy way out of all this, because it constantly felt like this is definitely a mistake. And this was not supposed to happen to me, not at this point in my life. But when the world found out about my status, and they started stigmatizing me, or at some point I felt they were stigmatizing me because I hadn't dealt with the issues that were affecting me internally, I crumbled because I wasn't strong enough on the inside. And that's why I'm very happy to have this conversation today, because today we are talking about how to deal with you first before we look at how the environment deals with you. As young people living with HIV, we face various forms of stigma, but the internal stigma is the main one that really frustrates us. Before getting into a relationship, you are tasked with the responsibility of disclosing your status and having to take your partner or your potential partner through the process of understanding why you're like that, and how they can cope with you with time. And this doesn't make it any easy. When you're about to settle down and the church wants you both to take a test, or even when you're ready to have a child and suddenly the stigma, the science of you equals you doesn't make sense anymore. And you decide, maybe I'll hold back and not be, and not get pregnant because I do not want to give birth to a child who comes out like me. This is one of the issues that many young women especially have been sharing with us, that they feel it's time to start a family. They feel it's time to be, to have a partner, but then this is not a conversation that we're all willing to have, because it is a difficult conversation, and it mostly also depends at what level of acceptance are you on, or are you still in denial? So if I was also asked to talk about whether or not there are approaches that have been found effective in addressing self-stigma, and I think listening through the panel already, there's definitely a lot that has been done, and there is definitely a lot that can be done. From my perspective, I think self-stigma is brewed by how one is diagnosed and how one is initiated into treatment. When I got diagnosed, I was taken through treatment literacy programs that were very helpful, that made me understand why I am taking this medication, why I need to be retained on this medication, and why it is important for me. They did not package it as, oh, this is a death sentence, you're going to die and all that. And that is one thing that played a very important role in how I evolved and how I came to accept the diagnosis. Also, a very critical part that worked very well for me was the support groups, the youth-specific support groups, where we used to meet as frequently as we needed to have conversations with each other, to build the conversation with each other and share our experiences about how the world was treating us out there. And with time, we became a stronger group, we became a stronger force to reckon with, because we destigmatized the conversations around HIV and also destigmatized some of these issues that are rarely mentioned. We got into support groups, we got into workshops, we get into training. And most importantly, at that particular facility where I seek my care, we have mental health support and counselors on ground just waiting to offer the support to anybody who needs it. So if this is something that is scaled up, and if we look internally first before looking externally, then young people can be able to be supported through the transition from adolescence, transition from childhood into adulthood, and the transition into what life has to offer. Then this would be a great opportunity to also deal with the issues that are affecting young people internally. And as Nadine said, it's probably time to destigmatize the term stigma in itself and start talking about the positive sides of what happens when we finally overcome the external and also the internal stigma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for really sharing some of those interesting insights when it comes to young people, and really the importance of supporting young people to really transition so that they can be able to get the adequate psychosocial support, as well as support even from the community and their peers as well. I think that's really, really important when we're trying to deal with issues to do with self-stigma and stigma that can be faced by young people. Thank you so much, Joyce, for those wise strategies and approaches. So now we're just going to welcome Karen. Karen is a program officer with the International Community of Women Living with HIV at the Global Office. And Karen, please take the floor and feel free to share some of the unique challenges or experiences that are related to self-stigma that women living with HIV are facing based on their gender, and also some of the specific gender-related societal norms or expectations that really contribute to a lot of women living with HIV to face stigma. So please, if you can share some perspectives on that, you have the floor.
Thank you, Anna, and hi, everyone. Well, thanks to GNP Plus for inviting us to the webinar, and nice to meet you, all the panelists. My name is Karen Danaway. I am the ICW Global Program Officer. And responding to the question, of course, they exist, and unfortunately they do. Women can have intersectional experiences of a stigma and discrimination, which means that they experience additional layers of stigma and discrimination because of being a woman, because of being on a key population, being a member of a key population, because of their socioeconomic status, because of their race, their religion, their culture, their immigrant status, and so on and so forth. And it's incredibly dangerous to have this stigma, this internalized stigma, because it prevents us from caring for and exercising our rights, right? When we talk about stigma in women, some of the thoughts and the mindsets are, they sterilized me because I have HIV. I know I cannot or should have children, or I got HIV from sex. I feel really ashamed having a sexual disease and I should not enjoy my sexual life. Or I will never have a partner because no one could really want to be with someone who has HIV. And these thoughts and feelings like this keep us away from going to health centers, keep us away to take care of ourselves and have a direct impact in our health and our quality of life. Because maybe we are embarrassed to be seen by someone we know while we're throwing our medication, because not being able to enjoy motherhood because we feel guilty, not enjoying our sexual life because we might be judged. And I just want to add some data. In the West Africa Regional Report that was published by the PLHIV Stigma Index International Partnership, which I highly recommend reading, it shows that almost 8% of the participants stated that they avoided going to the clinic or hospital when required because of their HIV status. And coming back again to my intersectional comments about this intersectional stigma and layers of oppression, almost 18% of trans women were most affected, and they avoided going to healthcare clinics. And this internalized stigma on women living with HIV is perpetrated by broken, unequal social, economic, legal, and healthcare system. It's perpetrated by patriarchy, by misogyny. And the stories we tell ourselves have a big damaging impact on women living with HIV. And it's crucial to remember all the women we lost also to internal stigma. That's why I want to say internal stigma on women. Anna.
Thank you so much, Karen, for sharing those interesting insights and intersectionalities that really affect women living with HIV, and also all those gender-related issues that we know women across the world are facing in all their diversities and different levels of their life. So I think that's really important evidence and information to know in terms of our programming and in terms of our interventions, and also in terms of our engagement, specifically when it comes to when we're commemorating the 8th Candlelight Memorial, really acknowledging that some of those struggles have not been won. There's still a lot of work that we need to be doing to address that. Thank you so much for that reminder. Next up, we're going to welcome Calvin. Calvin serves as the Senior Advisor on Community Engagement at the International Association of Providers of AIDS Care. Kevin, after his own diagnosis in 2016, felt drawn to support others living with HIV through advocacy and education. Kelvin is passionate about ensuring the best health outcomes for people living with HIV globally, with a particular focus on stigma reduction and supporting the work of community-led initiatives, which we all know are most important. When we have communities leading, when we have communities at the forefront, we can be able to achieve a lot. So Kelvin, welcome. And as you enter the floor, could you please speak to us around why there's so much need for Zero HIV Stigma Day, and what are some of the activities that are going to be taking place on July 21st, and also how do we hope this can be of impact in terms of addressing issues to do with self-stigma, and also how can different individuals or organizations be able to be part of this. Kelvin, you're up.
Thank you so much, Anna. Warmest greetings, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be there. As a person living with HIV and someone who's worked in this field, I have long admired the work of GMV Plus and the other panelists here, and it's such an honor to be here with you today. I've had the distinct pleasure over the last several years of meeting and working alongside so many amazing people living with HIV. I've seen and experienced firsthand the real world harm that self-stigma can do. I've seen what happens when you take the perceptions and the value judgments of others and believe that that is who you are. Shortly after my own diagnosis, as I was asked to share something personal, I was out with friends, and someone approached my friends and, thinking that they knew something, shared that they thought my friend shouldn't drink after me in this day and age. I've also been incredibly fortunate to be open in the States about my status, and thanks to the internet, the world. As one would imagine, that has brought some less than kind words shared from blank profiles. But it was my time in the clinic as a peer educator that I saw so many who had taken those words, opinions, and value judgments and had consumed them like poison, and the real world impact that can have on health outcomes. But I also saw the power of shared experiences. how among each other we can find ways to persevere through. I remember meeting a young woman in the clinic who shared that since her own diagnosis, she had been unable to look in the mirror without seeing the words HIV written across her forehead. I learned so much in that time behind closed clinic doors. But the most powerful thing that we can do is to find community, and truly communities thrive when we are able to show up as our truest and best selves. It was in those moments that I learned that if we can say aloud the things that others are afraid to whisper, we become voices instead of victims. We currently live in a time where hate is being legislated in substitution for good governance. Around the globe, the communities most vulnerable to HIV are being targeted by laws that stand in opposition to human rights. And these will only further stigmatize the communities we serve, putting us at greater risk of not reaching our goals. I believe it's time for us to come together and remember that before we are people living with HIV, we are human first. So to answer your question, on July 21st, I hope you'll join us as we come together for a global day of action against all aspects of stigma for Zero HIV Stigma Day. We chose July 21st to honor the life of the incredible force that was Prudence Bubele. She was an incredible advocate, activist, but more importantly, she was an immutable human who didn't allow this diagnosis to define who she was or what she was capable of. Our theme this year focuses on our humanity to coincide with the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, aligning with its message of acknowledging, embracing, and empowering the human rights of all. This year, we will host a short film, we'll provide a short toolkit, and a social media campaign that we hope will remind the world, but most importantly, ourselves and each other, that HIV isn't who we are, and that the humanity in all of us is something so much greater than something microscopic within us. The world around us is constantly telling us we're not good enough. So if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, and you're feeling that crushing weight of self-stigma, the last person you need to hear that from is yourself. I've always believed that HIV doesn't diminish your value. I hope you're reminded today that you're worthy of love, of joy, and belonging. The HIV is not bigger than your dreams, your ability to experience joy. It's not bigger than what you care about, and it doesn't limit your ability to change the world. If you'd like to find out more about Zero HIV Stigma Day, I'd love for you to visit www.zerohivstigmaday.org or follow any of the socials across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We hope that this day of action will impact people in a way that they see themselves as something so much greater than 3 letters. Thank you so much for the time.
Wow, that was amazing. That was amazing, phenomenal, really. Thank you so much, Calvin, for those soothing words in a very soothing voice. That really calms us all. Thank you so much for that. We really, really, really appreciate, and I can see the virtual round of applause just going up, and also just going up to the rest of the panel as well, the amazing panel that we just had in this first section. Joyce, Nadine, Karen, Sean, Calvin, thank you all so much for bringing such a diverse perspective when it comes to stigma and self-stigma. Thank you so much for spreading the love. Thank you so much for speaking to solidarity. And thank you so much for just being able to commemorate this amazing day with us, revisiting the journey that has been done before, and also the journey ahead that we have. Thank you all so much for being part of the first session. Right now, I'm just going to hand it over to Fungai, who's going to take us through to the second session. Thank you all so much. Virtual round of applause.
Thank you so much, Anna. I am completely blown away by the first session. Thank you very much. I know sometimes it can be very difficult to share your stories, but it is stories of lived experience that I can personally say as a woman living with HIV saved my life from self-stigma. I can talk about me all day, but that's not what we're here for. So I'm going to give back to Leseko because this is a very good moment where we can play the Dear Me video before I go and introduce the panels for our next session. Leseko.
Good, let me pull it up quickly. There's my thing.
Dear myself, dear me, myself, you are the one that I love, and you know that is true. When I think about you, I know.
Sorry, is audio up? Can everybody hear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll take this opportunity to ask you for your forgiveness. I hate you a lot. I didn't take care of you the way you were supposed to be taken care of. By not appreciating the body that I have, by not allowing you to have joy and happiness you deserve, by stigmatize you, by not allowing you to go outside and meet other people, by also abusing you in different ways. Please forgive me. That will never happen again. I can make it right by allowing you to do whatever you want with you feeling. And I also promise to trust in you and believe in you. You are wonderful. You are worth it. The things I am grateful about is, even if I am wrong, you manage to fulfill the dreams that you always wish for. You managed to overcome stigma, even if it was hard, a hard play. You managed to love me, and I only want you to let me know that I love you unconditionally. Yours, me.
I think that is an incredibly powerful letter of love, of acceptance, and also just viewing what is going through sometimes when you are feeling that stigma. I'm sure that that video can be made available. Maria, we can make that available for all the participants if you want to rewatch that. I am going to introduce our next panelists and invite them to take the floor one at a time. In this session, we're going to look at mainly personal experiences in addressing self-stigma, and then we'll delve into the changes that the journey of looking at self-stigma has brought into their lives, and emphasizing what that transformation looks like. It's my great pleasure to introduce Maud Chinembili, who is a coach of the work in Zimbabwe. She's also a founder, director of the work under the Tree Trust and Pan-Africa Positive Women Living with HIV in Zimbabwe. Maud, you're welcome. I want to ask you, firstly, how has addressing self-stigma brought about changes and made an impact in your life? And then also from your perspective, what do you believe is important for individuals to actually to address self-stigma?
Okay, hi, how are you everyone? My name is Maud. I would love to also thank Nadine for introducing the work or the inquiry-based stress reduction inquiry to Zimbabwe. I'm so happy to share this, that, you know, in the past, I always wanted to meet something that would change my life, but I didn't know what that thing was until I met the work, or until I met the inquiry-based stress reduction process. It was like a life-changing thing to me. I suffered for so long. I was having a lot of self-stigma. I lost my job. I was a teacher for almost 6 years, and I lost my job because I was in depression. I was in denial of being HIV positive. I didn't know what to do. But when I met the work or the inquiry-based stress reduction tool, it changed my life. I didn't even forgive myself for getting HIV.
because I thought it was my fault. I felt so shame. I felt a lot of guiltness. I had a lot of, I struggled with knowing my worthiness in life. So after when I met this was something else. This was like a life-changing thing to me. I realized that, no, this is not the end of the world. I can be someone. So after doing the inquiry, it took me years to actually accept it. And I went through the process of getting into the self-stigma course for 12 weeks. And after the 12-week course, I also enrolled for the school in Germany to go for the school, that what we call the School of the Wake. And I would love to thank Katie, the one who founded the Wake of Byron Katie. These two, I told her after the event that I want to go to Zimbabwe and go into my community and let everyone know about this too. That's when I founded the Wake under the Tree Trust, because I wanted to help other young people that were in my situation. So I'm always smiling and I'm always happy, because I don't see any reason to be, to self-stigmatize myself anymore. It's like a life-changing thing to myself. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You've articulated it so beautifully, and with such a beautiful smile. Somebody's actually complimenting you on your wonderful smile. Articulated it so beautifully that self-stigma can be that little thing that can almost take over your life and steal your dreams, but you overcame that, and you are now spreading love and solidarity, which is what this day is all about. Thank you so much for your kind and wise words. I will move on. I'm moving on quite swiftly because we've got two more speakers. So I will move on to our next speaker, Sylvia. Hi, Sylvia.
Hey, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So this is Sylvia Vumbunu, primary school teacher by profession, and also a coach of the work of Byron Katie. So Sylvia, I'm going to ask you to almost continue the conversation. Why is it important to emphasize the significance of seeking help when dealing with self-stigma? And what role does external support play in the process of overcoming self-stigma and fostering personal growth?
Okay, thank you. It is very important to deal with self-stigma, because if you don't, you'll be derailed in your track of living. Everything won't be the same. You'll be looking down upon yourself. You'll be ashamed. In fact, when I discovered my status, I alienated myself. I endorsed stereotypes from different people. I looked down upon myself. I even ignored people. I ignored social gatherings. Like I used to go to church, a very active member in the church, and then I stopped. So self-stigma is very deep. If you are not careful, if you don't deal with it, you can even die. Like what I heard Nadine saying, there was a lady who died because of self-stigma, because you are like putting yourself out of everything that is true to you. You are ashamed of yourself. You don't want people to see you. You suspect when you see a group of people talking, you suspect that they are talking about you. I teach at a very big school, and before I met the work, I used not to talk to people. I didn't want them to see me taking my medication. But when I was introduced to the work, I then realized that it was easier for them to know my status. I was able to share my status with them. Now they know, even if we go for school trips, they actually remind me to take my medication. So this is the journey that I've walked, and I know that it kills if you don't deal with this internal stigma.
Do you think there are any sort of potential barriers that individuals may face? And can you offer advice of navigating some of those challenges when they're trying to address self-stigma?
Yeah, there are a lot of barriers. When we are dealing with self-stigma, you won't be able to adhere to your medication. You won't be able to seek medical attention because you are afraid. Like myself, I stay in Harare, in the city center, and the nurses that work at a clinic where I collect my medication, I know some of them because they are from the community where I stay. So if you are not careful, if you don't address this, you won't be able to go and get your medication. You won't be able to take your medication. So you lose your worthiness. You think of dying most of the time. You say, I don't think there is any reason why I should keep on living. And there is also this issue of pill burden. When I've been taking medication for about 18 or so years now, so you end up being burdened. You live to the clock. So if you don't deal with stigma, you won't be able to enjoy taking your medication. To enjoy taking your medication because you know why you are taking the medication. So really, people need to know to go out there, to join support groups, to come and say they can invite us in mouth and we introduce the work to them, because the work is a very powerful tool that you can use. It's only 4 questions, which are very amazing. You ask them, they're simple questions. The first question you answer using yes or no. You don't have to explain anything, and you'll be meditating. So it means the questions will be meeting your answers will be meeting the questions from the heart, and it helps to move on. I don't know.
Absolutely fantastic. I love that. I think I love the phrase that you used about, addressing self-stigma will then lead you to actually enjoy taking your medication rather than looking at the pill burden that most of us suffered, especially in the earlier years of treatment. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Again, in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. If we had all day, we would still be discussing this. Thank you, Sylvia.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to a young man, Takudzwa Dongo, who was a participant of the Wakakosha program. And I'm smiling because Wakakosha means so much, and it has honestly transformed the lives of young people living with HIV in Zimbabwe to address self-stigma. So I'm going to ask you about your experiences in going through the program and of addressing self-stigma. And can you offer any inspirational messages to the audience? What words of encouragement or advice do you have for those currently facing self-stigma?
Greetings to you all. Wakakosha, you worthy. Wakakosha, you are important. Wakakosha, you worthy. Wakakosha, you are. Self-stigma stops me doing what I wanna do. I have to take a deep breath. I know I can get through. I know who I am and I'm learning how to love. There is so much stigma, but I will rise above. Okay. I'm very much obliged to be here. I thank you so much for the invitation. To answer your question, the only message that I have, the words of encouragement that I have to all those who are still facing stigma and self-stigma, that are going through that same situation that we all have been in, I just want to say that self-stigma, it is something that if you don't observe, or if you don't identify it, or you don't discover that it is you who is doing it to yourself, you will not be able to get rid of it, or to have a life of freedom. So the only message that I have is HIV does not limit you. You are great and unique in your own way. Despite being HIV positive, there are some things that one has to do. You are capable of living your life like everyone else, like anyone else. So don't lose hope. Wakakosha, you are important. That's the only message that I have, and the words of encouragement that I have to all those who are still facing stigma. It is something that you can get through, and it's not something that you cannot get free from. So just have hope and believe in yourself that there are some things and situations that you can come out of, just like self-stigma is something that you can just be free from, and you can understand, and also you know that there is a life out there without you thinking about yourself or without what you think, without being under the oppression of what you think about yourself and your status. Thank you.
I am blown away. Taka Kosha, we are all important. Thank you for sharing those very wise words. It is very humbling to know that the generation that is coming behind us is equipped with such rich resources. And it makes us, I think, for us older people living with HIV, sleep better at night, knowing that the younger generation, you've got it. You've got the self-stigma stuff. And I'm just going to, again, I'm so sorry running out of time. So I'm going to hand over to Florence to give us some closing remarks for this webinar. Over to you, Florence.
Oh my goodness, this has been such a phenomenal afternoon. And as we come to an end, just to ask for 2 more minutes of your time. I know we'll run over in like a minute or two, just to pause and sit with this moment, as it's been a phenomenal afternoon spent together as communities, but also with our allies and partners. Thank you. Sean started us off so powerfully, and Nadine helped us to learn what self-stigma is. For many of us, maybe today we have found a name for what we have been feeling, with no words to communicate what it is, or some way feel validated for how we have been feeling. We have learned that it's okay to feel shame, but to not only feel it, sit with it, but start to see how this affects us and our living with HIV, and then find help so that we can live and thrive and live better lives. This is the essence of Candlelight Memorial. It's about remembrance. We are acknowledging the role of history in our continued journey of living and thriving with HIV. And in this webinar, we have learned and we have jointly come together to remember, to really remember all the people that we have loved and lost. We remember the journey of our lives, what has beaten us, what we have managed to overcome. And I am so inspired by our last speaker from Wakahosha. And we look forward to what lies ahead, our self-worth, our love of others, and building together stronger as communities. With this theme, in the words of Joyce, as she spoke earlier, we are creating the space to go inward, to deal with you before you deal with everyone else. We have to begin to look internally first. And with this Candlelight Memorial theme, we really have a chance to acknowledge that we are human first, to sit in our pain, to mourn all our losses, those that have funerals, but most importantly, those that do not. What every of our lives would have looked like if we didn't have HIV is something we will never know, but which we must mourn. To effectively care for others, we must take this time to also take care of ourselves. That has been said by all the speakers here. As we head towards the Candlelight Memorial Day on 21st of May 2023, please join our social media action. On our website, and I think Lesego can share this, there's a link for you to light a candle in remembrance of someone you have loved and lost to AIDS. You can also write a love letter to someone you have lost. Most importantly, you can write a love letter to yourself, a Dear Me letter, to show your journey this far, for it is a powerful journey. You can share these letters with us and we can publish them to support our communities globally. Let us find ourselves a love so deep that we are able to spread the same to our communities and beyond, because it is only in this way that we can build stronger communities, louder voices, and greater solidarity for the continued fight for all that matters to us. So thank you again to everyone. Thank you, Sean, Joyce, Karen, Kevin, and everyone for all your honesty in sharing your pain. Thank you to our partners from Beyond Stigma for making this information loud for us and with us. Thank you for everyone who has joined this webinar and will continue in your activities at country level and with this discussion from your homes to globally. And we hope to continue working with you to spread the love and end stigma and discrimination in our communities. Before I go, I must remind you all that you are not alone, you are worthy, you are loved, and most importantly, you matter and deserve to be here. Wakahosha, you are worthy. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you, Florence. What amazing, amazing closing remarks. And Wakakosha. I'm going to say it in Shona Takakosha, which means we are all important. I will hand back over to Leseko in case she's got some closing housekeeping remarks. And again, on behalf of Beyond Stigma, where I sit on their board, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. And thank you everybody for being open to sharing your stories. Much appreciated. Back to you, Leseko.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you to our moderators for doing a wonderful job, and everybody that stayed on the call to listen to the amazing stories and amazing testimonies. Thank you so much. I just want to leave us with a candle lighting virtual, since we can't all be together on this day or on the 21st, but just to light a candle and take a moment of silence.